The first one is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville denying an appeal of John and Carrie Tan of the Planning Commission September 27, 2012 appeal of design of a mid-block pedestrian path connecting 45th Street and 47th Street. I'm not going to continue because Meru will.
Good evening, Mayor Brinkman and Vice Mayor Asher. Congratulations, and good evening, council members. So this is an appeal of the EBI's mid-block pedestrian path. If you may recall, on May of 2011, the council approved a use permit to establish EBI, which is a pre-K to grade 8 school at the existing building on 4550 San Pablo. The design and construction of a mid-block pedestrian path along the eastern property line connecting 45th and 47th Street was one of the conditions of approval of the use permit. On May of this year, the Planning Commission considered design of this path at a study session and then approved the design at the September meeting. This decision is being appealed by John and Carrie Tan. So this is the path. It's a 50-foot wide pedestrian path with a 6-foot wide pathway. The red that you see is a 8-foot high wrought iron fence. And these are more details regarding the landscaping and the different other elements in the path. And I can go into more if you are interested, but in terms of the merits of the appeal, these details at this point may not be that relevant. There are a number of issues that have been raised by the TANs, and what I would like to clarify in the beginning is that certain issues that cannot be considered, and then the other issues which are to be considered by you. So I'll begin with the ones which cannot be considered by the council today. The first is regarding the security gates. A condition of approval of the EBI's use permit state that in the future, after the path has been constructed, if security is an issue, then the council can consider requiring gates. The TANs would like to see the security gates be installed as part of the design and construction of the path. However, given the language of the condition of approval of the use permit, the council does not have the authority to require gates at this time, and this was discussed also at your last meeting when you set the appeal hearing date, and the resolution that the council passed specifically excluded the consideration of any amendment to the condition that talked about installation of the security gates. The second issue in the appeal that is not to be considered as such today is the wall stability. The wall that we are talking about is the wall along the eastern property line, which is east of the path. And the condition of approval of the path design talks about, at the time of issuance of the building permit, the applicant is supposed to provide documentation which essentially proves or verifies the adequacy of the seismic stability of the wall along eastern property line. And then if there is any deficiencies, the wall may be replaced or upgraded if the building official determines that such an upgrade or replacement is necessary. The TANs contend that the council should be informed of the building official's determination of whether or not the wall needs to be upgraded, and that the council be engaged in this discussion. The applicant has not yet submitted this documentation, which is natural because the design still has not been approved and is in consideration today. And when they do submit this documentation, the building official will evaluate the wall based on the current building code in effect. Issuance of a building permit is considered to be a ministerial act as opposed to a discretionary act such as a use permit or a design review. And thus, because it is a ministerial act, it is not subject to the appeal of this appeal. Furthermore, the determinations of the building official are not a proper subject for the City Council to be engaged in. The TAN submitted a letter dated November 29th, and that, among other things, talks about the need for a noise study in order to determine that the school is in compliance with city's performance standards. Noise is not an issue that the council can consider, as this was not part of the appeal statement, and the appeal statement is considered to be the two letters dated October 10th and October 28th. Also, this issue was not raised at the Planning Commission meeting at the time when they approved the path. The issues in the appeal for your consideration tonight is one concerning the light poles. There's a condition which essentially talks that the applicant provide information showing compliance of the existing light poles along the path with city's lighting standards. And if that the light poles are determined to be deficient, then the applicant may be required to replace them. The tenants are concerned that bringing the light poles in compliance may cast glare or light onto their homes, and if that happens, then the applicant should be required to install shielding in accordance with the city's lighting standards. There are existing conditions which sort of address it, but in order to clarify that, staff is recommending a modification to the condition that the shielding may be required. And this is essentially the language, and what you see underlined is the additional language that we've added. And it basically clarifies that if the lights do cast a glare, then shielding may be required. The second issue for your consideration today is the material of the path, the pathway. There's a 8-foot pathway within the 20 feet wide path. And the applicant originally had proposed decomposed granite, DG, as the material for the pathway. And during the study session discussion, some concern was raised by the tenants regarding the suitability of this, of using DG as construction material for the path. The applicant subsequently changed the material of the path to asphalt that was approved by the Planning Commission. The tenants, upon further consideration, believe that DG would be more appropriate material for both aesthetics as well as environmental considerations. We agree, and we do not have any objection to the use of DG, and we are therefore recommending an additional condition of approval, which essentially requires that the pathway be built of DG instead of asphalt or concrete. So essentially that concludes my presentation, and our recommendation for you is A, to reject the request to modify the condition regarding seismic adequacy of an existing wall along the eastern property line, modify condition of approval regarding shielding of the existing light poles to avoid spillover of the light, and to add a condition requiring material of the path to be changed to DG. That concludes my presentation. If you have questions, I would be happy to answer. Both the applicant and the appellants are here.
Okay, any questions from the council right now? Any public comment?
Lord, before you open the public hearing, maybe you want to hear from the...
Oh. Would you have me?
Generally, the appellant goes first
Okay.
with no time limit,
Okay.
followed by the applicant also with no time limit, and then public speakers limited to 3 minutes each. That's the
Okay.
usual protocol.
Are you ready? Please come up.
Just a clarification, the public hearing is open now?
Not yet.
No, I guess not yet.
Well,
It,
Technically it is, but we're really distinction between public hearing and public comment, so this is part of the
Public-
whole hearing, so
so this
yes,
will be a public hearing.
it is a public
Okay.
hearing, yes.
So it's our turn.
It's your turn.
Okay, so
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I need to use this overhead projector.
Okay.
If I could get some assistance with that, I would really appreciate it. So while she's doing that, I just wanted to say congratulations to everyone and good luck in this upcoming year.
Thank you.
Yeah, you just put it on top of it.
Oh, okay. Very high-tech stuff here. Maybe you can operate the pictures, would be helpful. I was just going to put this. Do I put it upside down, or?
Yeah, do you have blank paper?
Yes, I do. I have blank sheets. Okay. Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Kyrie Tan, and I live at 1074A 45th Street with my husband, John Tan, and 2 children, ages 7 and 9. We are here tonight to ask that you approve our appeal of the Planning Commission decision on the pedestrian pathway. As you will recall, and as Maru mentioned, in May of 2011, we filed an appeal, and we were encouraged to participate in the process with EBI to make the design of the pathway a success for our community. EBI at that time made a commitment to work with neighbors and members of the community throughout all phases of their transition into our community. And although it's not EBI's intent to have a negative impact on the community, the plans that are being put forth and approved on a schematic level for the pathway in particular have not been thought through. That is our contention. Yet these schematic plans are being approved without enough consideration for those which are being most impacted. So, for example, our issues we feel are being glossed over at best, and at worst, some of them are being left out entirely. And those issues are safety and security, quality of life impacts due to the noise and the lack of safety and security on the pathway, and now the latest development, which is that the wall that you see in this picture that borders the public pathway will be unsafe during an earthquake. So here we are 1 year later. We've participated in the process. We've gone to the community meetings. We've engaged in conversations with EBI and folks in our community. And now we're being told that because of how the language is written and the conditions of approval, based on a schematic plan, that there's nothing that can be done, that both the Planning Commission and, what I'm hearing, the City Council's hands are tied to do anything to protect the public from these safety issues that are now out here. So that's why we're here tonight. We just don't want to, or we don't feel that we should buy into that the mistakes of the past cannot be corrected. And these mistakes need to be corrected. The first mistake is approving a pathway without gates. In May of 2011, the city staff sought input from the police department, and at that time they thought that there were no security issues with regard to the pathway. But then a year later, they changed that viewpoint after seeing further plans. Sergeant Dower presented his detailed concerns in a 15-minute presentation at the Planning Commission study session, and he said that the pathway is simply not safe without gates. He raised a number of issues that the community members also agreed with, and citing his own experience as a beat officer for over 9 years. That at Temescal Creek Park, for example, that when the police department goes in at night looking for folks, they jump over fences trying to get away. That is a big concern for us, that someone will scale that wall if they have to get away from the police. His position also was that the way that the building is placed, EBI's building that is, it limits the ability for the police to survey the north end of the pathway from San Pablo Avenue. And the pathway in general, because of the traffic barricade at Building 74, makes it so that you can't, there's no natural surveillance because you don't have cars driving through there on a regular basis. It's just not an area that people are going to see on a regular basis at night. So he strongly recommended leaving that northern half of their property open after at all hours of the day, and he also really discouraged the fact that the pathway doesn't have gates. Then the Planning Commission, on 2 separate occasions, the study session and their public hearing, agreed that safety of the pathway at night would be mitigated by the addition of gates. And this consideration on their part actually resulted in them failing the motion to approve the pathway. They failed it. But then they were told, after much discussion, that their hands were tied, that they had to approve it. So they did. We don't really understand what the purpose of the meeting was, or further, why would you ask the community, why would you ask the police department, why would you ask people for their input about safety and then not use it or not act on it? This is very discouraging. None of that input has been taken into consideration. The second mistake was in determining that noise was not going to negatively impact neighbors, and again, basing that on a schematic group of information. In May of 2011, the staff concluded that noise would not be or should not be a significant issue from EBI, and I quote, "This simply is not true. Their calculations were not based on a noise impact study. The measurements should have been conducted by third-party professionals, and the noise level that they used is based on their determination of the concrete block wall that we're seeing there, acting as a very effective sound barrier in addition to the pathway, which at a width of 20 feet would further reduce the noise and act as a sound buffer." But that pathway is not scheduled to be built for years from now, so it's not providing that buffer. Calculations really were not done, and the report went on to state that the noise was much lower on the other side of the wall, on our side, again, without conducting measurements on our side of the wall. So that's bad enough. And then as you see in the picture, there's a second level of the building. That's the duplex, and our house is in back. That entire level where people live and where we live is not being addressed whatsoever, and the wall does not do anything to mitigate that issue. So we realize that this is a school and that there is noise from schools, but this is not Anna Yates. Anna Yates is not the right comparison because it is a public school, and the houses on either side are virtually empty. The one duplex has been empty since the time we got here. We actually tried to buy that place, so we know it's empty. The place next door is sublet from time to time. So, you know, we went through this process and we're being given examples that don't really apply. This is a private enterprise. It's not a public school. And currently their activities are not operating within the performance standards for noise. They just aren't. The noise that's generated by the school is detrimental to our quiet enjoyment of our home, and the noise levels are lowering the quality of our life in general. So we feel that additional conditions should be imposed to properly assess the noise levels with a third-party study, especially at the time when their enrollment increases. It's relatively small right now, and we're already experiencing issues. The historical record of the EBI site indicates that the existing CMU wall served as a sound wall. Documents on file at the building department include the Berkeley Farms permit with 20 conditions of approval that were influenced by neighbor complaints about noise. One condition required them to hire a professional acoustical engineer to reduce the noise levels at the boundary of the residential properties. It's very clearly stated. The permit included language to raise the height of the walls, all of the existing walls, to 10 feet. So when you look in the documentation, it says that these are 8 feet walls. These are actually 10, so I want to correct the record on that. It's actually 11. Because EBI is a commercial entity and not a public school, again, they should be held to the same noise performance standards as their predecessor was, especially given that this wall is a sound wall. The third mistake, or what's going to be a mistake, is that with regard to the seismic stability of the wall. This issue with the wall and the fact that our structural engineer has given the wall a life safety threat categorization is a fact, and it will impact the pathway sooner rather than later. As you know, the next big one is overdue, and it's not simply a matter of if an earthquake will occur, it's when it will occur. The planning director said that the seismic analysis was included as a condition of approval because, quote, "We want to make sure that this wall that's next to a public path isn't going to fall down on people if there is an earthquake," unquote. That is what was discussed at the last meeting. Based on the structural report by our engineer, Van Maren and Associates, the wall is known to be a dangerous condition. The height of the wall relative to its footing and the damage done to the footing is negatively affecting the ability of the wall. And I just want to show you a few quick pictures. So this is a picture of the footing on the west side of the wall. And at that side of the wall, the footing's actually at grade. On our side of the wall, it's a retaining wall, so the footing varies between 2 feet to almost 4 or 5 feet below grade. And on the west side of the wall, what appears to have happened is that the footing was demoed to make way for improvements for the curbs and the parking, not by EBI, but previous owners. So at this area, you can see that for some reason the footing has just been completely jackhammered off. A better picture is what you see here along the length of the wall. You can see that it's not just been jackhammered in one place, it's been partially demolished all along the length of the wall. And so the width of the footing actually varies between, I'm going to say generously, between 12 inches and 18 inches. So the original geometry of the footing was more like a 2-foot deep by 24-inch wide footing. And just engineering analysis, the footing is too small for that size wall. It may have something to do with the fact that it was a shorter wall at some point in time and that it was raised, but it doesn't calc out for 2007 CBC, or the current CBC, excuse me, 2010, and it definitely didn't calc out for 1970. So this footing's been damaged and the wall is compromised. So the results of the seismic calculations shows that the wall has a seismic safety factor of 1.17, and it's required to have a life safety factor of 1.5. So this means during a large seismic event, during an earthquake, the wall will fall over. Our engineer has told us that. He stands by that. The wall itself, the CMU block, it fails by 44%, and the steel reinforcing within the wall fails by 54%. So there are different ways in which this wall just doesn't work. It's not a good wall, and it poses a danger to life safety if it's allowed to remain. So, I mean, this is bad news, and the fact that we're going to put a public pathway next to it makes it worse. It's already bad enough for us, because our children's bedrooms are located within 8 feet of the wall, and the bedroom of one of our tenants' children is 5 feet from the wall. And there's also 3 gas meters across from the wall. So if this thing falls over, it's going to be bad. And then on the other side, you know, the community members and EBI school children would be reliant on this wall to be able to sustain an earthquake. Due to the dangerous condition of this, you know, I think, well, I know additional planning for safety of people on the pathway and adjacent to this wall is warranted. So we can talk about, you know, whether if EBI touches the wall or whether they don't touch the wall in doing their upgrades. That really doesn't matter because this is a public pathway, and when they do go in to build the entryway, they will be affecting this wall. Work being done by them on the southern portion of the wall will or could influence the seismic stability of the eastern portion, which is the part you see here. Their alteration, which will include the installation of a brace frame structure to support the southern wall, could influence the structural capacity of the eastern wall. They could be tied together, and they need to verify that relationship when they submit their calcs. The bottom line is that the condition of the wall is a detriment to our property. It's a threat to our quality of life. It should not be left in an unsafe condition by itself or in combination with the public pathway that will be used as a place of assembly, a recreational area, and a student drop-off area. Our children, tenants and their children, play and garden next to the wall, and EBI's children play next to the wall. The way that I'm seeing it, you know, by just deferring it to the building department, it's shifting the burden of this wall between us and EBI as a civil matter, and that would really be unfortunate because it would deprive us of our right to a safe environment. It would deprive the community of their right to a safe environment, and it would just be negligent to not do something that you could do to avoid something terribly wrong happening in the future. We feel that it's our right for a safe environment, and it is our right, and it's the role of the city to protect the public from the actions and inactions resulting from a private enterprise's construction projects, or public for that matter. So now, how do we resolve these issues? It's not by rushing to approve a plan that has not been fully developed. if EBI needs to move forward with their construction plans on their existing building, which they're prepping for, they should be allowed to do that. I don't think having this pathway tied to that permit makes any sense when it's not going to be built for several years. So we resolve these issues by working as a team, by working with EBI, by working with the city. As you've seen from our late night emails, we have reached out to EBI and we plan with a plan, that we hope will get this whole thing going so that everybody wins or feels as though they were treated fairly and everyone's issues were handled in a way that we think involve only minor compromises. And our ideas could save them a lot of money. And we've even put forth a proposal to share in the construction or the cost or to even purchase part of their land. My husband came up with a drawing, and this is the first that I've seen something presented which actually addresses this issue of the 90-degree bend that is a major safety issue. The plan, we sent the plan to EBI. It's a little fuzzy. Well, it's fuzzy, but you've also received a copy from us. Is there a up and down, a zoom? So I'll keep talking. So we sent the plan to EBI on Monday. We also, John spoke with John Horsch about the plan, and it actually was received well from them. And basically what the plan entails is, you might want to, you want to flip it?
You want to look at the way? Yeah.
Okay. So basically what the plan shows is that it's bumping the pathway over to the west by 10 feet. First off, it would be out of the zone of the overturning of the wall. And it addresses several security issues, the main one being the jog. So if you could maybe point so people in the audience could see. So the issue is with this 90-degree turn. We've been talking about this, everyone's been talking about this for years. Mm-hmm. Kids are acting up.
They're doing fine.
Okay.
Don't worry. We're keeping our eye on them.
Well, when you're a mother, you have that mother hearing, and you,
No, they're doing fine.
no matter what's going on, you hear what they're doing. So, so currently, the issue that this jog has created is that if someone's walking either north or south, they can't see if someone is approaching them, especially at night. And the designer has attempted to address this issue by putting the convex mirrors there, and that's probably fine during the daytime. At nighttime, I don't see that would necessarily help. But one of the things that John thought up was by lengthening this section of the wall, or this, yeah. So by pulling that down slightly by 10 feet, yeah, you basically are getting a different angle, and you can actually, as you're standing here, you're going to be able to see someone who's over here, or potentially in that corner. It does change the configuration of the path a bit, but we've really tried very hard to keep that to that square footage to be balanced with what you wanted in the conditions of approval, or the promise to dedicate that land. So overall, it does deal with that jog, because previously that jog was 35 feet and now it's reduced to 20 feet. So it really creates a more manageable place to handle from a security standpoint. I mean, and then you can even have that area as gardening, either for the public or EBI. Locating the pathway to the west would also move the entry of the pathway away from our tenant's front door. I just want to show you a picture of what that looks like. Currently, as the path is designed, it is extremely close to the front door of our tenant's front door. And it's a very scary thing for them to think about. And it's, I think without seeing a picture, you can't imagine exactly what's going on. But it's less than 7 feet from their front door. So, and there's a blind spot there. They could be attacked, quite frankly. They can't see someone coming around that corner. That's one of the reasons we wanted security gates on the path, because it's just too close to their front door. So getting back to the benefits of the plan that we came up with is that it fixes that line of sight problem at the 90-degree bend. By shifting the pathway over, it actually would enhance the noise reduction, which staff was using the pathway as a buffer. Well, if it's 10 feet further out, it's that much more of a sound buffer. So it provides greater distance from the upper level of the house to the schoolyard. The other item that we proposed is a wooden sound wall. That would be the buffer to, or that would be the border to the pathway, and that would address noise as well and deter people from climbing over the wall into our yard. The other issue is that there's benefits on our side, of course, which it would put back for us potentially the parking and the open space and some accessibility issues that we have that were taken out when Berkeley Farms put the CMU wall. It was pushed so close to our house that we basically have 6.5 feet to get down our driveway. And we have no ability to provide parking for our tenants, which normally you'd be required to do that. We don't have a compliant situation. So it would make it so that we could provide parking for them, that we could provide open space for them, and yard space for them. So it's something that we've, thought about for many years, but have not really had the opportunity to deal with. And now we're saying with EBI, we'll purchase that from you, or we'll help you with the construction. We'll help you remove the CMU wall. We've really put ourselves out to see what can work, and we've gotten cost estimates. We've done estimates ourselves. We've done a lot to really try to show to them that we're trying to work with them and trying to make the pathway more easily maintained, and that it's a cost-effective way to deal with these issues, especially with regard to the CMU wall. And for the city, it's a win for everyone. The city will have their pathway. It will be there for folks in the community that want it. It addresses the safety issues. So the sense of our children being safe is of the utmost importance to us, and which is why we have made the offer to EBI to purchase that land or to come up with some other equitable compensation for that. And we wanted you and EBI to know that we're not just here trying to get something for free. So in closing, we feel strongly that the City Council should exercise your good judgment and authority to protect us and the community and EBI from the negative impacts due to life safety, quality of life, and enjoyment of this property, which is caused by this incomplete design of the pathway, the unsafe wall, and the lack of the noise study. The approval of the original conditional use permit just did not adequately address these concerns, and we really hope there's a way to address these. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Are you all done?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. Unless anybody has any questions about this drawing at all, I drew it, so.
Well, I guess what we probably should do is hear from EBI,
Okay,
their spokesperson,
sure.
and then maybe have you come back and for
Sure.
council questioning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have this problem every time I come here and I can't find the thing to... Okay. Thank you. Good evening. I came with notes. Fortunately, I didn't type this up. I would have started Madam Mayor, but clearly that's inappropriate. Congratulations, Mr. Mayor and Madam Vice Mayor, and thank you, Council, for having us and having this opportunity to talk to you. My name is John Horsch. I am a member of the Board of Trustees at EBI. I have 2 children who attend the school, and I chair the Buildings and Grounds Committee. I am joined this evening by several members of our board and other parents from EBI, and also, perhaps more specifically appropriate, by our facilities project manager, Margaret Salep, and by Peter Yu from U Strandberg Engineering, who may be able to answer any questions later on that you may have. As you recall, we were here about 18 months ago as outsiders looking to come to Emeryville, and we're very excited to be here tonight as members of the Emeryville community. Some of these things have changed a little bit, and I just wanted to take a couple minutes. I know you have a long agenda tonight, but EBI is an independent international bilingual school. We currently have 270 students in pre-K through 6th grade, and will extend through 8th grade as our current students age. EBI's mission, independent school, is a mission-driven organization. I just wanted to take a quick minute to read this. The mission of Escuela Bilingüe Internacional is to provide an excellent Spanish-English bilingual education based on the highest international academic standards in an environment that thrives on diversity, fosters global citizenship, and develops the character necessary to recognize that cultural uniqueness is the touchstone of our common humanity. Again, just to recap some of the milestones in EBI's history, we opened in 2006 as the first independent Spanish-English bilingual school in Northern California. We were certified as an International Baccalaureate World School in 2010, and most recently have been accepted as a provisional member of the California Association of Independent Schools just this current year. A little bit about our students. I mentioned we have 270 of them. 55% of our students are from families of color or mixed heritage. We have 22 nationalities represented in our student population. 35% of our students spoke Spanish before they entered EBI, and approximately 35% of our families received financial assistance with tuition to be able to attend the school. That's a very critical part of the mission that I just read for you, and something that our board values very highly. In addition to running a school, we do have some special programs as well. This past year, we had 213 kids enrolled in summer camp programs at the school. We run enrichment classes after school, and just wrapped up our fall session of that. We had 239 students enrolled in after-school enrichment programs. They ranged from salsa dancing to capoeira to computer programming and language training for non-EBI students in both Spanish and Mandarin Chinese. And all of these enrichment programs are open to the community at large, and we have a number of students who don't attend EBI who take part in these, and we're very excited to have them as part of our community. To recap where we are in Emeryville, the Planning Commission granted us a conditional use permit in March of 2011. That was appealed to this body and upheld with some additional conditions in May of last year. The CUP that we have grants us the right to expand into our current space over approximately 6 years, and we are very proud to say we opened here in September of 2011. So we're now in our second school year in Emeryville. What I can tell you without any hesitation or equivocation is that we're absolutely thrilled to be here. The experience has been fantastic. We're very excited to be part of Emeryville. We're excited to be sort of located in what seems to be becoming an educational corridor along San Pablo Avenue. I think our community itself has become very integrated into the Emeryville community. Our faculty and families come to work here, they shop here, they dine here, and many of them live here in Emeryville. So it's, we feel very connected as part of that, and are very excited to be part of the greater Emeryville community. Related to the pedestrian path, I think Miru mentioned at one point that this is EBI's path, and EBI is designing this path. The requirements for the path, though, come from the conditional use permit, and it's in response to something that the city has asked us to do as part of our occupation of this property, or use of this property. The path requirements were pretty straightforward. They're included in the staff report that was part of the original approval, and also in the conditions of approval that came forward. It says a 20-foot pedestrian pathway connecting 45th and 47th Streets along the eastern property line. That would include a 12-foot wide asphalt path between 4-foot wide green belts with hydro-seeded turf. That it would be open and accessible to the public at all times for pedestrian access only, and that the design should be reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission. So yeah, as we move forward with this, and I know that not everyone who's been involved in the design process necessarily agrees with all of these conditions, but they're pretty straightforward, and they're things that we were responding to when we created our design. We did have engaged in a very extensive design and feedback process, beginning with a community meeting that we held on our campus in April that was attended by a number of neighbors. We held not just a Planning Commission approval, but we actually held a study session with the Planning Commission in May and collected feedback at that point. We finally, after making some changes to the plan, submitted the plan for approval at the September Planning Commission meeting, and did receive approval at that time. Throughout that period, we have had extensive meetings with our neighbors, with the staff, city staff, with Planning Commission members, and those we have had those, and we continue to have those, and feel as if we have really very strongly engaged with our community in that respect. The pedestrian path design that you see, essentially we tried to account for 4 design considerations. We wanted to create a functional and attractive space. We've proposed a variety of tree species and created what we hope will be an educational opportunity both for our students and for the community at large. We have a strong focus on sustainability. Our school is a certified green business. We take sustainability very seriously. All the species that we've proposed for the path are bay-friendly and appropriate for this climate and area. Additionally, we really wanted to take the opportunity of the path to create a connection between EBI and the community. So, for example, we've proposed a mural along one portion of the wall, the existing wall. Again, a way to create both some connection and also a sense of place on the path. We've also proposed not fencing the path directly on its northern half, keeping some opportunity to flow, more direct visual flow between the path itself and the and EBI's property. Safety was also a very significant concern for us. I think, I don't know that we've successfully solved these issues to the satisfaction of everyone who's looked at them, but we have spent a lot of time and worked very hard to create a space that is as safe as can be, given, again, the parameters that were in place. We've designed all the plantings for visibility. We've designed the path for visibility. The fence is an open fence. It's visible from the school and from the entries. There are no shrubs proposed. All the plantings are taller trees with a minimum of 8-foot low limb rate and height, and ground cover only. We've positioned the trees away from the neighboring properties so that there's not a possibility of using the trees as ladders for accessing neighboring properties. We again have connected the school to the path on the northern half, which we think cuts down on the sort of corridor feel of a fenced-in path. It's a long block. That's why the path's proposed, I believe. So we wanted to minimize that corridor effect, which we think also helps with the safety. The siting of the walkway within the larger path, trying to maintain visibility as much as we could. In response to some feedback that we received at the study session, we've added bollards at both ends. We've added signage that it's a pedestrian-only path. And we've also added a convex mirror at the bend in the path, which obviously is somewhat of a design challenge, but we're trying to address that as best we can. So looking at the path design, you saw it earlier, Maru presented it, and I know you've probably seen it many times, but I think it's safe to say that we're a long way from a 12-foot asphalt path with hydroseeded grass. I think we've really tried to take this opportunity to create something that that allows us to connect with the community and will be a valuable community resource. We've got trees, we've got plantings, we have signage, we've been asked to add pet waste containers and bags, and we've done that. We added the bollards at both ends, again, in response to feedback. So these are all things that EBI has contributed sort of above and beyond the list of requirements that were in place by the city. One of the items up for appeal was specifically related to the path material, and the staff report that governed the original conditions of approval on this for our project called for an asphalt path, as I mentioned. We had originally proposed decomposed granite at the Planning Commission study session. At that study session, both the appellants and other neighbors raised some concerns about the DG as a surface. Based on that feedback and based on some additional study that we did in terms of ongoing maintenance in particular of a decomposed granite path, we are proposing that the path stay as originally specified as an asphalt path. We have DG, stabilized DG on our campus right now. We put some in as part of our process. We're now 6 months further into learning how that holds up to the rigors of children and play and things. And quite frankly, we're just not convinced that about our ability to maintain the decomposed granite at in a state that is would be appropriate for a public pedestrian way. Related to the structural integrity of the wall, I think we certainly take life safety very seriously. We're a school. The TANs have provided us with the structural analysis that was done, and we're in the process of having that, or expect to have that reviewed by our engineer. And if there are existing life safety challenges that need to be addressed, we will absolutely address them. But as it relates to this path, the conditions of approval, as we feel, are pretty clear. That when the time comes for us to submit a building permit for this portion of the project, that we will work with the building department to absolutely make sure that it meets whatever seismic requirements are in place. It seems very straightforward to us. We plan to comply with that and expect to have no difficulty doing that. In conclusion, I just wanted to say that EBI stands ready, willing, and able to build this path and would be happy to do it. We agreed it's part of the conditions of our use of the space. We do, though, seem to keep coming back to some inherent challenges with the path in this location, be it the specific location of the path, be it the somewhat unstraight nature of the eastern property line that the path is supposed to follow. All of these are sort of inherent challenges to the path in this location. And the only thing that we wanted to specifically offer is that if sort of after having spent 8 months working on a design, that we're still somewhere where this just does not, isn't working for the community and our neighbors in particular, and we are neighbors too, we are part of this community as well, that if there's something else that makes more sense to enhance the pedestrian experience in the city, I know that's a priority for the city and for the planning department and the planning commission, we would be happy to engage in conversations about that. I know there was an earlier agenda item about safe routes to schools on sidewalks, and I think particularly given the location of the school and the adjacent Emeryville Unified School building, there certainly may be some things that we could do if the interest was there to address some of that. So that's all I've got.
Council members? Any questions?
We should open the public hearing for comment.
I'm going to open up the public hearing. Anybody that would like to speak on this item, please sign in and get behind Ken, I guess.
Hello. I've watched this item at the Planning Commission and the City Council. It used to be when an item came to the Council on Appeal, you had full discretion, and now all of a sudden your discretion is limited. I don't know why that is, but on a safety issue, the gates you should put gates there, and you should put automatic gates so nobody has to go out there and lock them. They can be closed. The same vendor who provided the doors for City Hall could provide those gates. And look at the neighborhood that's in. It's one thing in the daytime and it's another thing at night. And I would strongly urge you to go forward with putting in automatic gates. Thank you.
Good evening. Lately, I've noticed that the city is having a lot of problems with projects that have been implemented, then later realized that the approval of the project interferes negatively with the surrounding neighbors. A recent example of this was the art.com billboard. We have zoning, municipal code, and the city's general plan, which all has been developed supposedly to benefit and protect the residents of Emeryville. When it comes down to it, EBI has already have been given a lot of leeway to be located where it is. For me, sadly to say, EBI's location across the street from me is an inconvenience and an annoyance, as I cannot enjoy quietness in my own home, as the noise it produces emanates throughout my entire house, even with all my windows closed. I'm paying the price I have for other people's commuting convenience, and this is all done because of poor planning. Now we have two safety issues that have to do with the security of the surrounding residents and the public at large. First of all, I'm surprised that you've been instructed not to discuss an addition of security gates in the design of this pathway. The pathway should have been designed straight right from the beginning, before the property was even bought. Like even on the general plan, the picture shows a nice straight line straight through there. It never, no one in the right mind would have a 90-degree turn in a public pathway. It just doesn't make sense. During the Planning Commission study session for the pathway, Sergeant Dower of the Emeryville Police Department spoke for 15 minutes explaining why the gates are necessary and important due to the layout of the pathway and its blind curve. We wasted his time if we do not listen. And, as a citizen and a voter and a taxpayer, I'd like to give you guys the ability to discuss this matter. And I don't really care what the lawyers say or employees. And I'm a resident here. Next, the seismic stability of the wall along the pathway is a no-brainer. The wall has to be made safe no matter what. Part of this wall was built in 1947 along with the old Berkeley Farms building. I'm not sure even why the city allowed the school to convert this type of structure to house 400 young children, even in light of California's Private Schools Building Safety Act. The time era and type of construction of that type of building is nearly identical to the old collapsed Cypress Freeway.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes up. I appreciate it, though.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. Anybody else for public comment? Going once, twice, no one, a lot of people in the room. Okay, public comment closed. What is the will of the council?
Well, I have some comments I'd like to make. I want to thank both the school personnel and the TANs for bringing this forward, and in particular, I want to acknowledge that I think it's rather daunting for individuals and private parties to file an appeal in the first place. So I just want to give you credit for doing all the work that you've done to come to this point. This is an interesting juncture of something that the school really, it doesn't really serve the school's educational purpose to put a public pathway in. This is something that was driven by the city's desire to enhance walkability in the Triangle neighborhood where there aren't throughways and you have to go down to San Pablo or Adeline in many areas to be able to go from one numbered street to another in the neighborhood. So we're creating this tension as a city. We are creating this tension because this is private property and that we want to try to have public right-of-way in. So it seems to me that Mr. Horsch made a last comment saying that, they would like to do everything possible to kind of come up with some kind of win-win solution here. I think Eric was right on the, hit the nail on the head, where the safest thing is a straight path with gates. And I don't think that, so there are so many problems that have been elucidated about about this path, that if the city is imposing this on these private parties, then I think it behooves the city to pay for the gates and to have a straight path. And lastly, around the materials for the DG, I just want to, versus asphalt, I just want to say we've had that discussion before about the greenway, and we have two different kinds of surfaces, because in wet weather, let's say if you were to push a stroller or something with wheels on DG, it leaves ruts. And so I don't agree with the staff recommendation to change out asphalt or concrete with DG because of the wet weather conditions and how that would degrade the DG. So this council member would like to see, if we decide that we want to impose this so-called improved public benefit onto these private parties, then I think it behooves us to have a straight path with gates at the end, and that we should pay for the gates. I don't think I think it's an unfair burden to put on the school to try to do this. So that's just how I feel about it.
Okay. Jennifer?
I like your bold assertion, Councilmember Atkin, but I'd like to hear from others as well.
Okay.
Mayor Brinkman, I fully support Councilmember Atkin on the DG, because if you go down to the frontage road path and you see the ruts in there after the rain, or you go onto the greenway, it's not practical. We're trying to attract families, and then we're going to make it difficult for the strollers and the little petty bikes. So I'm with you on the DG, but I'd like to address a different issue. I think we worked very, very hard on our general plan, and you know, it's very easy to draw straight lines on a general plan and say, we want to put this path through here, and it will save people maybe 6 minutes walking all the way to the corner of 47th and then going down to 45th. I, for one, think we should look again at whether we really are creating something that will be a negative in the community rather than a positive. And in terms of the gates, I'm a little bemused by the police department and Sergeant Dower promoting the gates, because we went through this with Temescal Creek Park, and because there were no eyes on the park and we wanted to keep it safe. So we thought the solution was putting gates on there. Clearly, what that did was keep the police out and get the bad guys go in there and do whatever they were doing. So gates are not necessarily a solution. I would like to propose to the council that we move ahead with this particular resolution tonight, because I think the staff has done good preparation here. But I think we should go back and take a long, hard look at that pathway, because it's clear to me that it's not 100% positive. There are enormous negatives there, both for the TANs, for EBI, and for the people in our community who think they're going to be safe walking along that path. Clearly, we do not have the resources in the police department to monitor this 24 hours a day. So I would propose we move ahead with this resolution as presented to us, but I would like to see this come back to the city for further consideration about whether this really serves the community, not just the TAMs, not just EBI, but the safety of the community as a whole.
Yes.
I support what Nora has said there. This is my neighborhood. I live just down the street from the TANs and from EBI, and you know, I feel the tension really when I look at the general plan and I look at the city that we want to grow into and that we want to be.
We're talking 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
But then also, well, I mean, having a pathway is nice, but then also the neighborhood that I live in now does change at night. And I am very worried about safety and that path. And it doesn't break up a super block. It's at the really the end of that street. So, like Nora said, I mean, you can walk simply around the building.
Well, can we do this? And I'm asking the council this. Can we move ahead, take a vote on this resolution, but then bring back to the council, it would take an amendment to the general plan and probably lots of other good legal stuff. Can we do this, Michael?
Yeah.
All right.
Jennifer, do you have a comment? Or you still thinking?
Yeah, I'm still thinking.
You know, I would support that because I walked that path, or got the idea of where the path is going to be, and to me it's a pathway to nowhere. And I always look at it from the standpoint of community benefits. Who does this really benefit? And at night, I don't think it benefits anybody. So I think it adds to the cost of the taxpayers to try to police that area. And also regarding the TANs, I mean, when you buy a house, you assume that your neighborhood's not going to change. I meant, think about putting sidewalks in after a house has been built. I meant, when they bought their house, there was no sidewalk there. There was no people walking by at night. So I think I fully support that, and I think we need to go back and look at what gives the community a better benefit than this path. So.
All right, let's wrap this up. I move this resolution.
Okay.
I'm looking
Is
for
there
a
a second? Now you have a comment?
No, I wanted some clarification because I want to understand that if we go ahead with the resolution as denying this appeal tonight, doesn't that mean that the conditions of approval stand? And then how are you changing that in the general plan? I don't understand the next step.
Well, you would have to, sounds like you're directing us to come back with a revision to the general plan.
Yes. What does that do to the conditional use permit that's already been
Well,
issued?
we would also have to probably, I mean, I could talk with counsel for EBI afterwards, but I think we would probably need to process an amendment to their use permit to eliminate the condition requiring them to provide for the dedication. There would also be a transactional piece because they already have, in fact, they've already recorded an irrevocable offer of dedication that we would have to execute a quick claim deed or something like that. So there are some details that we would have to work through, but I'm getting the overall sense from the council that irrespective of what you're doing in terms of approving the path tonight, you're really telling us come on back subsequently and remove this path as a condition of this project.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Rachel Horsch, counsel for the project sponsor for EBI. We would be more than happy to come back to a future hearing and engage in a discussion about alternatives to the condition as it exists now, and assuming we can all come up with a appropriate additional condition, alternative condition, to agree to amend that particular condition with whatever makes the most sense as a result of that process. And yes, we would need to also, there's a irrevocable dedication that would need to be revoked.
Wow, you can do that?
I did have one question of clarification on Councilmember Davis's motion. I wasn't sure if that was including staff's recommendation on the DG or not.
Clearly, I'm against the DG.
So item 5.
Moot, it's probably moot.
So item 5 should be deleted in the resolution.
Right. I accept the amendment.
Mayor Brinkman?
Yes.
I'd just like to clarify a couple of things. If you're directing us to come back with a general plan amendment to delete the path from the general plan, that, of course, will have to go to the Planning Commission first, because the Planning Commission has to hold a public hearing first before a general plan amendment comes before the City Council. Second thing is, in addition to just deleting the path from the EBI conditions of approval, I would think that EBI would want to prepare a new site plan, and the council, and I'm unclear, I'll have to discuss with the city attorney whether this has to go to the Planning Commission first or not, but they have 20 more feet of property now, and I would think they would want to redesign the site plan so that they're utilizing that 20 feet to its full advantage for their use and to the best benefit of the neighborhood.
Well, I agree with you. I think that there has to be community benefit shown for this. So I acknowledge is that if the pathway's not there, there's a cost to removing that pathway. So something needs, to me, something of similar value needs to be given back to the taxpayers of Emeryville.
Right. I'm assuming it's not in that location, though.
Well, it doesn't, I wouldn't say it has to be in that location, but I think that's something that I would like to see EBI come back and say, okay.
So I think there's three things. There's a general plan amendment. There's a redesign of the site plan to show how that 20 feet is going to be used now.
Right.
And then there's an alternative public benefit thing, whatever it is, that EBI would come up with. Right?
Well, we'll have to talk about that.
What?
I mean, there has to be a rationale for it, so it's just not tit for tat. There has to be a nexus. And there was a nexus in relation to this path and where it was located in your general plan. So anyway, there's, you can't just say, okay, well, we're going to take this, try and equate the cost and value of this path, and we're going to put a dollar figure on it, and you're going to spend money somewhere else. Because there has to be some relationship between what that someone else or that something else is and what the effects and the impacts of this project are and how they are contributing to a need to mitigate whatever that impact is. So anyhow, it's not as simple.
It's not as easy as I made it sound.
No,
Especially if
That
you
doesn't
factor
surprise
in
me.
increased police department costs.
Yeah.
well, the words of the general plan that are kind of ringing out to me about the goals of the general plan is about creating a fine-grained, walkable city. So if we're going to scratch this, which is removing a potential to enhance the walkability, and it is degrading the pedestrian experience to have to go down to a state highway of San Pablo Avenue to walk around. So there is more of an inconvenience placed on the pedestrian than if they were able to cut through before going down there. So, but that being said, it seems to me maybe some offset about how we can improve the fine-grained walkability of Emeryville would be where we try to think of other things that maybe EBI could contribute towards.
Maybe even the experience right there on San Pablo, on that block.
Yeah, we
Right,
can.
I would note that the general plan, in addition to showing this path, also indicates San Pablo Avenue as a pedestrian priority zone. And you have adopted design guidelines that talk about what a pedestrian priority zone should be. I'm not sure what more they could do, but we can look at that.
We have time.
Yeah.
Let's just go at a slow pace. I think we have people who can talk to each other, reasonable, rational people, and we're going to come out with a better, safer community.
Carrie,
I call the
you want to
question.
say something?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do,
Yeah.
if I may. So one thing that we need to keep in mind that if the pathway goes away, that there was language in the original conditions that talked about the noise and the fact that the sound was a buffer. So now if that does go away, it does eliminate that sound buffer that was built into the reasons why it was acceptable for them to be at the noise level that they are. So that still needs to be addressed in some way. So I want to make sure that that doesn't get taken off completely, and then we obviously still have an issue between us and EBI with regard to the wall. So while it sounds exciting to move forward to work on these other issues, we can't let those other items just go by the wayside.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I'd just like to weigh in and say that, I do see the tension that we've created. I think what the way Ruth stated it is correct. That said, I want to honor the general plan and the vision that in the 5 or 6 years that the folks who put in hundreds of hours into that had. I do personally think that we lack connectivity in this town, and the general plan was trying to address that. It's addressing it in a clumsy way, because sometimes it's not easy to do it in a more delicate way that is easy for everyone to accept on both sides. I guess we should work on now finding a mid-block path through there, but I'm sure that would be very difficult as well. We have other places in town where we've tried, and you know, in Berkeley, we like the little paths that go between
right.
houses, but they were there when people moved in, right? So that's part of the difficulty. So I think the folks here who have spoken are correct in trying to solve this very difficult problem that's been going on for a long time and has clearly had large impacts on the community. But I wanted to say that it's really a shame that we're losing our vision and our connectivity there. That will be missed.
Okay.
Call a question.
Call the question.
I think we needed a second.
Oh, is there a second? I thought Ruth
I thought we had a
seconded
second. Was it Jack who seconded?
Jack did.
I didn't second.
You didn't second.
I didn't second it.
it. Well, is there a second? I'll second it.
All right.
Okay.
I apologize. There was one other item I want to get clarification on for this motion. There was some language in there about the lighting standards. So I'm looking to Charlie or whomever to at least confirm how that.
I think if there's
It's
going to be a
addressed.
path, then I think the lights are going to be shielded.
But I believe the standards address lighting, whether there's a path there or not. So if that's an issue we have to take up separately, that's fine. I just want to make sure that
Well-
that's the clarification.
Return with a general plan amendment.
For the existing light,
changes that-
existing light poles.
Right.
has nothing to do
There was some proposed modified language to the existing condition about lighting that says that a photometric plan would be needed to show compliance of the existing light poles and fixtures, and if the existing lights are shown to be deficient, that they should be modified and not cast glare on adjacent properties. So, I mean, I assume that's part of your motion. You were moving this resolution minus the DG,
You are correct.
right?
Okay, so we have a first and a second. I guess call the vote.
Councilmember Atkin.
Asher first?
No, because she's not vice
Oh,
mayor.
that's right. I have to get used to that. I'm at the top of the roll again. That hasn't happened in a while.
You're up.
Adjustment, yeah.
I wrote it down.
Thank you. Thank you. A reluctant aye.
Councilmember Davis.
A positive aye. Safety first.
Councilmember West.
I'm aye with my connectivity issue reservations.
Vice Mayor Asher.
Aye.
And Mayor Brinkman.
Aye. Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for that. Next one, next